first group of trends has to do with big economic and social shifts that we see coming. There's been a lot of business books over the last couple of years looking at what we call the group economy. And this is people taking technology to work together and create new economic relationships other than the one between producers and consumers, which has really been the one that's dominated our thinking over the last few decades. Clearly, there's a shift now to states and national governments asserting their role as primary drivers, not just of markets, but of scientific research. In the United States, we're about to lay out $100 billion for energy research over the next few years to transform our economy. And so this graph of private sector bearing more and more of the research budget may actually shift significantly, and governments may take a renewed role. Sustainability, obviously, will be a big economic driver, and the convergence of ecoscience and economics to solve the scientific and policy problem of actually measuring and pricing carbon will be a huge, huge driver. We also looked at trends that are shaping not just the subjects of scientific inquiry and technological innovation, but also the people and the institutions that will push that agenda forward. Andrew Whitty just gave us a wonderful address talking about the importance of the pharmaceutical industry in technological innovation going forward. Synthetic biology is an area of biological research that will actually allow us to write the code of life the same way that we write software today. And Craig Venter, who is one of the big proponents of synthetic biology, basically says this technology will be the way we make everything in 20 years. Ubiquitous computing, embedding sensors in every man-made object, from products to buildings to vehicles, even inside our own bodies, will transform the way we use computers, and it will literally fade into the background. We've spent decades trying to build artificial intelligence that would replace human intelligence. And we're moving now to forms of artificial intelligence that actually complement our intelligence and help us wade massive piles of data that are being generated by sensors and ubiquitous computing. The kinds of people that are doing science are going to change dramatically. You see here the recipients of last year's MIT 100K Innovation Contest. This is a group of scientists coming from all over the world, cultures that weren't really represented in a huge way in 20th century science. They're much more entrepreneurial than the previous generation of scientists, and they're also much more transdisciplinary. They are pulling knowledge from different fields to solve the problems that they're interested in. And finally, the institutions of science are about to undergo a huge transformation. Scientific journals and the societies that publish them are under full frontal attack right now by open access publishing on the web, and journals like Public Library of Science, which are serving the needs of emerging fields like genetics and computational biology. And finally, directly relevant to this audience, we're seeing big shifts in models and places for doing R&D. In the 20th century, it was a handful of superpowers and a handful of technology regions that dominated innovation. This study by McKinsey identified hundreds, if not thousands, of hubs of innovation around the world. We're seeing a shift towards much more lightweight platforms for creating new technology. In many ways, in the internet business, the venture capital model is breaking now. Simply can't profit because it's so easy to launch a web startup. And there's an incubator in New York called BetaWorks, whose motto is one guy, $100,000, 100 days to launch. And that's a fundamentally new way of thinking about the pace of technology innovation. We're also seeing, as was mentioned earlier, the universities are taking a much more important role as economic engines in their respective economies. And this is going on around the world. Jordan Anderson from a New York-based consulting firm called Appleseed is here today. He's compiled a portal called EduImpact, which catalogs all of the many economic impact studies that universities have released over the last couple of years, the most recently being Harvard University, which claimed to have a $5 billion a year impact on the Boston area. Universities clearly see this as part of their mission. We also see economic development shifting from sort of trying to compete globally in big areas of technology to making know-how sticky. And that is taking something that's unique and valuable locally and turning it into a competitive advantage for global marketplace. So Snowpolis in Finland has been a training center for winter sports for many years. It actually has an underground tunnel where people can train year-round for winter sporting events. They're now turning that tunnel into a laboratory for winter clothing, for sports nutrition, and other kinds of innovations like that. And sticky know-how, the idea there is to try and keep knowledge from leaving the area. We're also seeing small social research spaces. The big laboratories and campuses of yesterday are giving way to these intense collaborative spaces like La Cantine here in Paris. And then finally, I think regions will be more important to innovation than at any time in the last century, sheerly because the scale and complexity of the kinds of technology projects and scientific research problems that we're attacking. No single institution can do everything that's needed to finish a project. And so you have to draw upon a regional network of resources. And mapping those regional knowledge ecosystems will be a central challenge going forward. So those are the trends that we think really are going to shape the future for science parks, technology regions going forward. But we wanted to develop a couple scenarios to give you a picture of what that future might look like as all of these trends come together in many different complex ways. And so we focused on 4 of those trends that we think have a high degree of uncertainty. We think we understand the range of outcomes, but we're not quite sure which one will actually happen in any given area. Clearly, there's great debate in the university world about how engaged universities should be in development of technologies commercially, in research agendas that are set by companies, and in entrepreneurship and spin-off activities. And we heard from Andrew Whitty about how in the United Kingdom, that's clearly a topic of debate. The sustainability question, how different innovation systems will be measured and benchmarked in terms of their ecological impact, is an area of great uncertainty. What will happen to science institutions? We know that there's new networks of science that are forming online. Where will they come together to convene, to meet up in conferences like this? And then finally, and I really appreciated Andrew Whitty making this point for me, that there's tremendous uncertainty about where innovation will come from in the bio industry, pharmaceuticals, biotech. Will it come from big companies? Will it come from startups? Will it come from some collaboration? How fast will it come? This will have huge impact on economic development.